Financial Argument. Follow us on YouTube.
Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, as everything is continually building up with the election, with what's going on around the world, we see the economy deteriorating very, very quickly now. I mean, it has completely accelerated to the downside. And it looks like at this point the central bankers are running out of time, because as we come into this holiday season, we're going to see the economy completely implode on itself. And when we look around, we've been watching all these economic indicators decline further and further, where it looks like we are completely in a recession right now, heading towards a major collapse of the system. And we continually look at housing, and housing is absolutely awful. I mean, back in August, we saw that housing starts and permits, well, they were awful. September data, well, that's a complete disaster. Now, they thought housing was going to rise by 2.9%. But we know by looking at the housing market that this was completely impossible. And we see right now that housing starts, it has plunged by 9% in September. This is the weakest since March of 2015. Starts have crashed almost 12%, the most since April of 2011. Now, for the first time since June of 2014, housing starts fell for 2 months in a row, crashing to 12% year on year. Because what we're seeing right now is, first of all, we're out of the hot season for real estate. That's normally during the summer months, and no pun intended there. But we are heading into the winter time where housing really slows. And during this summertime, we never saw housing really pick up. Multifamily housing collapsed by 38% month on month, 40% year on year. And this tells us something. This is another economic indicator letting us know that we're no longer in this fake recovery. We're in this recession teetering on a collapse. And it's not getting better. Because when we look at the Cass Freight Index, we see that shipments sank by 0.4% for the month and are down 3.1% from shipments a year ago. Now, what this means is this holiday season, it's not going to be good at all. The corporate media, the U.S. government, they're going to try to cover this up as best they possibly can. Black Friday, Cyber Monday are probably going to be a disaster. Now, the corporate media is going to try to spin this. They're going to try to make it look like that everything is great. They're going to show like, those 10 people trying to get into Walmart, but rest of the stores are completely empty. And when we look at Cass Freight Index, we see shipments are completely declining. The shipments right now are lower than 2015, 2014, and 2013. Cass Freight expenditures, well, those are declining also, and they're lower than 2015, 2014, and 2013. Rail volumes are lower in 2016 than 2015 than 2014. So what we're seeing right now is this holiday season is going to be a complete disaster. And we understand that the retail market, well, it's not going to do as well as it once did. This is why stores continually close. This is why we're seeing more and more people being laid off from the retail industry. And believe me, people are not moving towards the online sales because we're not seeing the decline in retail from brick and mortar stores reflected in the online sales where it's going up the same amount. What's really happening is people are losing their jobs. People don't have that extra income to go out and purchase goods from these online stores or from the brick and mortar stores. And as more and more people lose their jobs, it's just going to get worse. And we've been seeing this. And even the people that are finding the jobs, they're finding part-time work. And the part-time work is not bringing in the same income. And we have proved this over and over with the federal government tax receipts, with the state tax receipts, showing that revenue has continually declined, even though the U.S. government central bankers are telling us that unemployment is almost at full capacity here, which is a complete lie. And we all know it is a lie. We see the central banks, they are making their move. They only want one digital currency, and that is their digital currency. We see the ECB officially warned about the dangers of virtual currencies in general. And they pointed to one in particular, that is Bitcoin. The increase in the use of virtual money, they said, might lead to a decrease in the use of real money, thereby also reducing cash needed to conduct the transactions generated by nominal income. Well, that is true, because people are going to say, well, we don't need the central bank. We don't need to use their currency, which is the dollar in the United States, the euro in Europe. We'll use this virtual currency. And if we just deal in this, guess what? You don't need to pay taxes on it unless you convert it over to the central bank currency. And this is what they're most afraid of. Because imagine if the public decided to use a virtual currency outside of the system, or they decided to use a physical currency outside of the system that is not attached to the central bank. Well, guess what? The central bank would have nothing to do with what they're doing. If stores decided to take Bitcoin, some of them have, until you convert it, you're fine. And they're very worried about this. So what they're doing is they're creating legislation where they're trying to get rid of Bitcoin and other virtual money. And the ECB urged EU lawmakers to tighten proposed new rules on digital currencies, fearing they might one day weaken their control over the money supply in Europe, in the United States, and everywhere. The central bankers are very scared about other currency systems because it would be outside of their system. Now, the central banks, their agenda is to spread debt around the world. We know this. And they've spread debt everywhere. And they're running out of places to do this. Most of the countries have so much debt they can't even operate. And most of the countries are implementing austerity on the people. And these countries, they're collapsing. And the debt level is getting so high, it cannot be sustained. And they know this. They know jobs aren't being created, manufacturing is declining, the economies are declining rapidly, we're in negative interest rates. And what the central banks and governments like to do is they like to control the people. They want to make sure that they have control. And one way of doing this is using maybe a universal income to give everyone a certain amount of income every day, even if they don't work. If you don't work or you do work, if your job was outsourced to robots or technology, doesn't make a difference. Everyone will get paid. Now, what happens is you become subservient to the central bank and the government, and you have to do what the government wants. So think about what they're doing right now. They will implement this. Some people call it helicopter money, but a universal basic income is not a one-time thing. It's a continuous thing where they will be able to control the people because the people will be dependent on them. This is what they're doing with health insurance. They want you dependent on the government. You're receiving subsidies. You're under Obamacare. this is what you have to do if you want this. You have to be vaccinated. You have to take the treatment that we say. You have to do what we want. So think about what they're doing right now. If they're going to give you an income, they're going to give you health insurance, they control the population at this point. And this is what they've been trying to do for a very long time because they're afraid of the people. The people scare them quite a bit because there's a lot more of the people than there are of them. And this is why they want them dependent on the government. Now, in the beginning, it's when they mentioned, when they created the welfare system, they created programs to help the poor, it sounded good. And it sounded like, oh, the government is trying to help. They're trying to help these individuals. But we have to think about, why do these individuals need help? Why do we still have poverty? Why is the infrastructure continually deteriorating in the United States? We're allegedly one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and I know we're not the top, but we create the currency out of thin air. Well, the Federal Reserve does. But if you notice, none of those funds are being filtered back into the United States to the people. So once again, it goes back to the central bank. Because their agenda is not to help the people. Their agenda is not to wipe out poverty. Their agenda is not to fix the infrastructure inside the United States. Our government employees, our government servants, they're controlled by corporations, by central banks, by foreign governments. They do not work for the people. They work for others. This is why when you look at our country today, you see that nothing's really changed. Actually, the poverty level has gone up. There are more people on food stamps than ever before. The infrastructure in the United States is deteriorating rapidly. And there's a reason for this, because it all goes back to the one source, and that is the central bank. It goes back to the elite, those hiding behind the curtain. And if we as a people can maybe stop fighting with each other, if we can stop arguing about Republican, Democrat, black, white, orange, purple, green, religion, and sit down and take a minute and say, who is our common enemy? What is our problem here in this country? Why has nothing changed over the years? Why has it gotten worse? Why do we have so much debt? Why are they trying to take away our rights? If we can sit down and do this, we would be a force to be reckoned with. We would be able to change what is happening right now. We would be able to remove that central bank. We would be able to get rid of the system we're on right now. Remember, this system was brought into existence in 1913. The founding fathers fought to get rid of this system. Andrew Jackson was campaigning on getting rid of the central bank. But these central bankers, they always weasel their way back into it. They always bribe. They always do things in the dark of night. And this is what they've done all along. They hide behind the curtain. And we need to expose them. We need to take back our economy, our country, and our lives. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.